Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen. Each week, I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business, their own individual business sectors, and finally, what caught their eye in this week's Punchline. But before I start, I just want to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And each week, we also have a hot topic, and this week it's going to be Gloucestershire County Council are spending over £300,000 in road safety initiatives. So we're going to ask the panel their views on that. Okay, let's meet the panel. Today we have Sarah Mansfield, joint MD and co-owner of Gloucestershire Food Dock. The 3.5 million food and hospitality business has been open to the public for over 20 months now and has 13 of a proposed 15 businesses now trading. So we'll find out who's next, who's trading well, and how is the hospitality business going. Welcome, Sarah. We got Moreton Cullimore, the MD of Cullimore Group of companies and managing partner of Cullimore Farms. They employ over 100 people with a turnover of £15 million. He's also the chair of the Road Haulage Association. So we're talking to him about farming, aggregates, haulage, and hopefully Wagyu beef as well. We got Mike Mellor, director of part owner of Quella Bicycles Limited. Last time we spoke, Brexit was the major issue, but now is it Mr. Trump's tariffs? And are they affecting his business and anybody else he's associated with? So we'll find out all about that. And also, what's new coming down the tracks for Mike? And finally, last but not least, we've got Andy Perry, director of Avenue Cars, the company based in Birdwoods, founded by Nick Brodie 36 years ago and sells hundreds of nearly new and second-hand cars and vans across Gloucestershire and the UK. Andy joined the company in 2019, became a director in 2020. It's a very, very competitive market, the car industry. So we'll find out how he's faring, what's moving and what's shaking, and how is the motor trade doing. Okay, let's see what's making the papers today, courtesy of Sky News. So here we go, the Daily Express. Weak Starmer under fire from Madelson's fiasco. The Times, Madelson, I was clear about links to Epstein. The Daily Mail, Starmer ignores string of warnings. The Daily Star, Lineker, I'll never go back to the BBC. I'm missing Gary already, by the way. The Sun, face of evil. The Daily Mirror, home in disgrace. The Daily Telegraph, Starmer faces MP fury over Mandelson's scandal. The Eye, Mandelson's exit leaves weakened Starmer facing wrath of Labour. And the Financial Times, Mandelson dismissed as Britain's UK ambassador. So there is obviously a flow of stories there about Mandelson. Okay, let's start with you, Mike. What have you picked out from the papers today? Great to see you again, by the way.
Thank you very much. Well, I've tried to steer clear of the two obvious ones, which is the Charlie Kirk shooting and Mandelson. Although I was a bit shocked to see in the Times that the Oxford Union president, George Aberonier, did a WhatsApp to his great big WhatsApp group within the Oxford Union, basically celebrating the shooting of Charlie Kirk. And I thought, what a sad state of the nation that is, that there's somebody representing an academic group who's supposedly intelligent, supposedly encouraging debate and proper open chat, is just dropping it to the lowest common denominator on social media. So I thought that was very sad. That was in the Times. In the Guardian, I picked up the story about the Brazilian former president Bolsonaro, who was a bit of a right-wing loony. You might remember he sort of advocated shooting drug dealers, very anti-immigration, very extreme character, could be likened to another large world leader with a silly haircut that we might know about. But he's just been sentenced to 27 years in jail. So I thought that was interesting. You know, we have these people in power and we think they're there forever. But maybe occasionally they get their comeuppance. So that was in the Guardian. I thought that was interesting. And then the last one, I bought the Sun just because I thought there might be something amusing in there, but there isn't really. It's one of those days, isn't it? It's all either Charlie Kirk or Mandelson. So ended up with actually a really depressing one. And that is the surge in universal credit has gone up to 2.9 million people claiming sick pay. And, how on earth do we grow this economy? And when we're paying for so many people not to work, and, I'd be interested to hear Sarah's take on that with getting young people working. And so
There we go.
Just a depressing headline.
Thank you very much for that depressing story, Mike.
Yeah, no problem.
and it's a good link. It is a very good link to Sarah. So, Sarah, welcome to the show again. Thanks, Mike, for a good collection of stories. What have you picked out for the papers?
Yeah, so I've picked out two things, as one of Mike alluded to. There's a piece in the Times, second page Times, looking at young people and work and the mental health crisis. So there are now 500,000, nearly 500,000 under 30 claiming universal health benefits, which is extraordinary. And I know that the government are clearly aware that this is a problem, and their bias is now to look at how they can resolve that through providing work skills and opportunity. And I think that has to be the right way forward. We have to and it's beholden on business really to do this as well. We have to do everything we can to support any young people get into the workplace through whatever means that we can as business. Now, whether that's providing internships, whether that's providing apprenticeships, whether it's providing a bit of, a week out of school support that the schools do, we must all dip in and try and support that and show that work is a positive environment. I think we have to make employment interesting. We have to make it fulfilling. We have to make it rewarding. And every sector can do that. Every sector has an interesting facet that they can do that with. So, Gloucester, it's very important. We've got the college, we've got the University of Gloucester, we've got Hartpury, and we have a lot of an opportunity to put a lot of young people into work in this city, in this county. So something that we need to pay attention to, in my word. And it's not just those who come out of school without qualifications. It's also graduates who are struggling to find the right roles at the moment and find the jobs to get into. So yes, we need government to do something, but business has to also play a role in that, in terms of making it fulfilling and enjoyable.
Sarah, I just want to interject there, if you don't mind. The trouble is that the government hasn't actually helped that much, by rising the national insurance things with insurance. I've had a number of interns, over 30 when I used to have the fire station. But you've got to be so careful nowadays. That's the biggest problem. The alarm bells go off.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I don't disagree, Mark. Employment has become a hugely complex area. And that's not helpful. I don't disagree, but that doesn't mean we should give up, because otherwise we're contributing to the problem. And it doesn't mean it's impossible either. It doesn't necessarily have to be costly. A lot of improving the employment environment is about time and energy and investment of yourself and your people into it, and actually the culture of the business. And I think that has a huge impact. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that it's being made any easier, but it doesn't mean that we give up.
They've got to want to work, though, haven't they? And if universal credit is just so easy to get, then I know Moreton was saying earlier in our preamble, struggling to find drivers. Why does somebody want to go off and get their HGV qualification if the government's offering them a free handout? Culturally, the country cannot afford to pay for these people, and 2.9 million people just claim, say, "Oh, I don't want to work. I'll just take the government's money." It just doesn't stack up.
And if you think of the lack of the resource there that we're just wasting, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary.
Well, without a shadow of doubt. No, let's bring Moreton in anyway. Thanks ever so much, guys. Moreton, what have you picked out from the papers? I know we're going to talk about. Well, we could talk about the drivers if you want to now. But what have you picked out from the papers first of all?
So for me, it's the new housing secretary that's talking about. He's reinforcing this line in the Labour manifesto of we're going to build this 1.5 million homes by 2029, I think. I mean, 5 years ago, we were a million, but just before COVID, we were a million homes behind schedule anyway. That figure's only got worse. I'm not sure the 1.5 million actually solves the long-term problem, but we've seen in Punchline in the last week also that cement production and demand in this country has fallen back, and that's not because we don't need to build these houses. It's because people aren't buying them, but the government seem to be blaming all the wrong people. It's the housing developers aren't developing them quick enough, etc., etc. A few years ago, you would have heard me talk about, it's we need planning reform because it takes forever to get planning permissions on sites, and that's creating the backlog. And that still exists, and the reform is still needed. But the developers right now, because there's been such a stuttering economy for so long, they have the sites, they have the phases to be able to build these houses. But people are just so scared of getting mortgages and committing to that. I was on a train back from London this week, and there was a group of, I'd say, people that you'd expect to be starting on the property ladder or on the property ladder at the beginning of their journey and being excited about that. But they were all, there was six of them on the train sat on two tables either side, and they were all talking. They were obviously on some sort of business trip. And they were just saying renting is for them. That's what they're going to do. That's what they've chosen as their path, because they don't want to commit to a mortgage. They don't want to commit to the uncertainty of, what mortgage rates are going to be in 3 years or 5 years' time, because everyone has become used to what's been happening over the last 5 or 6 years, and they're going to rent. And that's it. The culture has changed amongst those people in their mid to late 20s and early 30s, and I think that's part of the problem. And I think the government need to actually get in tune with the reality of what's happening and how it's happening, and stimulate the economy in other ways, so that people can be more confident of getting back to what we know.
Let's be honest, Morton, it was never a realistic target. All of us here in the private sector, when they said 1.5 million houses in 4 years, we're shaking our heads thinking, where are the bricks going to come from? Where are the plumbers, the leckies, all the different types of people we need to build the houses? They're not there.
Well, I
Yeah.
think that's exactly it, Mark. You've got the same problem as Moreton trying to find drivers. You haven't got the tradespeople or the number of tradespeople you need to build that number of houses.
And everyone wants to work shorter weeks as well, which cuts
Yeah,
productivity.
it
But that's
just
a whole
doesn't
nother
add up.
can of worms.
Yeah, just doesn't add up to me. Thanks ever so much for that, Morton. Let's bring you in, Andy. Great to see you again, mate. So what have you picked out for the papers?
Two things really, both sort of business related. One about the need to keep older people, instead of saying retiring at 50 or 55, keeping them in the workforce, and the benefits that not only brings for the businesses that they represent, but also for their health and well-being, and general lifestyle, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah, and is there another one as well?
Yeah, the other one that I picked out is that I think in the Times, 70% of parents think that their children would do better if they moved abroad, which
Well, we
I
all
think
admit.
is a real general feeling at the moment.
It's funny you should mention that, I'm over 55, obviously. And
No.
I know. Who would have thought? I picked up my RAF pension, and I must admit, I'm starting to think, well, when am I? How long can I carry on doing this for? And I think the government hasn't made it any easier for us to do that. And also, as we had a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people want to go abroad now. A lot of business people want to go over there. Setting up in Dubai and in Spain, in France. A lot of the entrepreneurs I know with a lot of money, they've gone. They've left the country already.
I think that we're also losing a massive massive skills gap if we're losing those 50, 55-year-olds that have been in the world of work for 25 or 30 years and they're leaving. We can't replace it, can we? So I think we have a huge skill gap at that end of the market, and a lot combined with not bringing younger people through, like Mike and Sarah alluded to.
And it's quite funny going back to the other conversation that Morton was having as well, as we were talking about it. Um, I had my plumber here the other day, and he was explaining to me the amount of people in his industry are older late in their 50s who are, or even 60s who are working, and those people are going to have to retire sometime. And it's right across the board. It's leckies, it's plumbers, builders. We haven't actually got that younger generation coming through, which says exactly what Sarah said before.
It's exactly
probably the more skilled workers as well. Those experienced guys in the trades. I'm sure there's lots and lots of very, very good up and coming sparkies and plumbers and carpenters and all the rest of it. But there will be, the young learn from those old dogs, and if they're disappearing through early retirement, that will leave a skills gap for sure.
Without a shadow of doubt. Sorry, Morton, you want to say something?
Yeah, it's exactly what happened during COVID. A lot of the older generation truck drivers retired. They were just like, I've got to leave now. I've got to look at my health, and we lost so many, and immediately post COVID, and that's what's contributed to the creation of this driver shortage. So all of a sudden, all these people left, and the people coming through, the attrition rate just wasn't positive enough. And we need 40,000 more drivers per year to meet the demand of what UK transport requires to keep delivering what we're delivering right now.
Wow, 40,000 shortage.
Yeah, well, we need 40,000 more per year to keep up with what we're doing. We need about 200,000 more drivers over the next few years.
How long does it take to teach a lorry driver how to drive, Morton?
I mean, that firstly, it's not a cheap thing to do, as you can imagine. Again, it's no different in some respects to a normal driving test. It's how much time you put into it. So if you can go in and do the lessons and the teaching, on a regular basis, you can get through in probably 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. But there's theory tests and all the rest of it. But being a truck driver isn't just about getting that license, saying, hey, I can now drive a truck. All cars are more or less the same, right? There's a plethora of different trucks, and therefore it's not just getting the license. You then need to go to a company that will take you on and then give you experience on each type of vehicle, and you've got to then relearn. And then there's also the driver's CPC, which is ongoing, and that's what puts a lot of people off as well, is the fact that with a car license, you get your driving license and you're good for whatever it is, 40 years, until you get re-examined or you lose it through other purposes. A truck driver needs to continue his education each year and demonstrate those hours to maintain his license, as well as his driver medicals, etc., etc. Is obvious for obvious reasons. It's an onerous thing, but yeah, it takes time, effort, and money, and a supporting company, and rightly so. But it's not a quick and easy to maintain process.
And also,
if you said to those 2.9 million people claiming sick pay, they're poorly, they can't work. Look, this can't go on. Here's some funding to become a truck driver. Here's some funding to learn a trade, but then you've got to go back to work. It would help the industries, and it would help the government. It would reduce that bill. I mean, it's going to cost in the short term, but it's costing anyway. We're paying people not to work, paying them a lot of money not to work. So let's pay them to learn something that they can then do for the rest of their lives.
I think sometimes it's not as easy as that, mind you. It's obviously personal circumstances and things. I mean, the thing about a lorry driver or truck driver, it can be quite a lonely road, isn't it? Morton, you see them parked on the side of roads, in miles and miles from home. They don't see their families. They work very unusual hours. It must be quite difficult.
Yeah, it's for sure. I mean, it depends what work you're on, what business you're with, but for sure. I mean, I was speaking yesterday in Birmingham, actually, at the Future Forum, and freight crime has just gone like that in the last couple of years, because people realise that there's things of value on the back of these vehicles, parking in service stations. You've heard me campaigning all over the place about, the lack of drivers' welfare facilities around the country. We send these people that we know out in these vehicles, and you kind of, in the nicest possible way, expecting them to be custodians of the load when they're parked up, like you're saying, hopefully not a lay-by, but if you've planned it right. But there isn't enough service places to pull over. The motorway service stations are not good enough. The only reason they've got CCTV is to make sure you paid your £45. It's not to keep you secure. And there's these freight crime gangs going around now targeting lorries because they know there's bottles of wine in the back. They know there's goods that easily sold in 5 minutes. And yes, it can be lonely as such. Some people love that. Some people love that kind of environment and that culture. And you can see some really, really wonderful people on TikTok and things like that these days talking about their experiences, and they've got their air fryers and all that. And a truck these days is appointed better than anything it ever has been before, but it doesn't come with a shower and a toilet. And that's just basic human needs. So it is for a certain person. It's also very rewarding, and the modern trucker is very different now, but it's a good salary for someone. Yeah, it can mean that you are out maybe 3 days a week away from your family, maybe more than that. But there are certain companies doing certain work where you can still get into that vocation and not necessarily have to do the longest innings of it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely fascinating. Thanks ever so much for that, Morton. I'm going to go into our individual business sort of section as well, and we'll come back to your Moreton Cullimore side of things very quickly as well. But Mike, let's bring you in. Let's have a look at Queller Bikes here. I'll just go back to the site here. Hopefully, you'll just see the newspapers. I've got Queller Bikes. There we go. Can you see the bikes there, guys?
Yes.
Cool. So this is obviously your website, Mike. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the business?
Yeah, I mean, sales are good. We've introduced a geared bike. People always used to say to me, "Who buys a single speed bike?" And it is a niche market. So we finally relented and we found an in-hub gear that still retains that lovely clean look of the bikes. So that one in the middle there is actually a geared bike with an in-hub rear gear. So it gives us the ability to offer gears and still have that lovely clean Queller vintage look. So that's been good and has really helped with sales. We're trying to bring production into the UK now, just to have more control over it. But that in itself, as the paperwork there and getting HMRC clearance, so that we don't have to pay anti-dumping duty on some of the parts that we bring in, has been a real hurdle. The individuals we've been talking to have been very helpful within HMRC, but the process just takes so long, months and months. And then there's credit checks, and they want guarantees that if duty's unpaid, it will be picked up on a personal guarantee, and then that has to be underwritten by the bank. So red tape to try and actually build something in the UK and create jobs. I was really shocked how much of an obstacle there was from our government processes to make that happen. So we're just about there now with that, and that will hopefully help a little bit with margins, gives us a bit more control of the supply chain, makes us a UK builder as opposed to a largely imported builder. Unfortunately, we still can't buy the parts here. It all still has to come from the Far East because no one builds those parts. They just don't exist. But and the Brexit issues haven't gone away. Our sales to Europe are almost nil now, because of the hassles of duty and transport. So it's a mixed bag really. Sales strong, new products, the geared bikes made a difference. The electric bikes going really well, and and bringing it here should, help long term. But it's been a bloody slog.
Oh, what about Trump? Has he had a say in what's going on? Obviously, because
Well,
we talk about these.
He's definitely caused instability in the bike industry in China and Taiwan, and made those people very nervous. One of the factories we buy from, they supply hire bikes to cities. So the last time I was there, there was probably 1,000 bikes all destined for Denver or Chicago, or and if Trump's going to put a 40% tariff on those, then they're probably a £500 product that becomes a £700 product. That is going to impact. They're still going to need the bikes, but it will impact the length of time it takes to get an order. It will put pressure on the supply chain, and ultimately, the American public will pay for that somewhere along the line. So yeah, good old Donald. Whether these tariffs will stay or not, none of us know, do we? Changes his mind like the wind.
He does indeed. He does indeed. All right. Thanks ever so much.
But he's a really nice guy, though, so we will forgive him.
I'm sure he is. Very orange is what I'd like to say. I'm going to bring you in now, Andy. Let's talk about Avenue Cars. You've been a while. I've known you a while as well. And what is the car industry like at the moment? Because as we were alluding to, it's not easy out there. Let's bring up your website.
It certainly isn't easy at the moment. It really isn't in terms of. But I don't think it has been particularly easy since COVID. Really, we've gone through a massive shortage of cars that weren't produced. During the COVID period, that's had a huge knock-on effect into the general supply. Prices have moved in that period probably 30% upwards during that period. We are seeing a very gradual decline at the moment in terms of wholesale prices, but stock is very, very hard to come by. Everybody's fighting for the same stock, and that's what's holding the market up still.
Yeah, I was going to say about stock, because this was what happened to second-hand cars during COVID, wasn't it? The value of a second-hand car rocketed, and you just couldn't get enough of them.
And there is more supply coming back now, but it's still not enough. We've probably lost 30 or 40% of our natural supply in a 0 to 3 year old market.
Why?
Why have we lost so much?
Just purely because of the cars weren't produced, or cars and vans weren't produced from say 2020 through to 2022, and we're into those. If there was a car registered in 2022, we'd now be into that 3 year change cycle, and we haven't had those coming through.
Oh wow! Okay, so
is that your sweet spot, Andy? A sort of sub 5 year old car?
Yeah, really, it is. Again, I think that a lot of people have also decided over the past couple of years that if their car's going really well still, they'll hold off on the purchase, just purely because of the sort of economic factors we're facing at the moment.
And are you starting to see electrics coming through as well?
Yes, there are. Very, very hard to sell as a second-hand proposition. There's a huge question mark over battery reliability and state of health. There are better reports coming out now on those vehicles, but again, I think the electric market is very, very hard. Value-wise, they probably lose 60 to 70% of their value over 3 years, where a normal car would probably lose somewhere between 30% over 3 years. So they look very, very good value, but again, factor that in with how usable they are. We've had numbers of people that have bought an electric car first of all, had it for 3 years, and then have come back to buy a diesel off us or a petrol because they can't deal with the charging state.
What about the van market, Andy? How's that moving? Because obviously, I remember coming out of COVID again, the van market really took off.
Again, the van market is very, very tough in terms of the small to medium size users, sort of like 0 to 10. vans on a fleet, that they're just holding on to the ones they've got and only replacing when they need to. I think, like we've talked about, house prices and mortgages. Everybody's fearful at the moment. They're just holding on to see what happens.
Right. Okay. Well, good luck with that, mate. And is there anything that's sitting on your forecourt that you'd really like to push? Give a heads up on.
That lovely Bentley that we went out in about a year ago or a couple of years ago. That'd be lovely if we could move that on.
Yeah.
You've had it for 2 years.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was. I bought it at a 50th birthday party, and wish I'd never attended now.
How much is the Bentley going for?
It's £32,500.
It doesn't sound too bad for a
What did it
Bentley.
start at?
Is that the one I drove?
It is. Yeah, that's the one.
Maybe that's why it's gone down in value. I tell you one thing, I got to admit, we did a little test drive around his garage. I've got to admit this, and a test drive of a van. And as I pulled out of his forecourt, I hit two other cars. Andy took it rather well. I just want to say that. So, we didn't have that too much on the video, did we, Andy? Anyway, so thanks ever so much. Let's go over to you, Sarah. Great to see you again. Obviously, I've been a big fan of the Food Dock, as you know, for a long time. I'm going to bring up your website as well, just so we can see it. Let's have a look here. There's the Food Dock here. So, okay, how's it gone?
Yeah. So we have just finished our sort of second spring and summer of trading, and the website's not loaded. There we are. It's interesting, really. We've brought independent dining into Gloucester. I think largely it's largely the first amount of independent dining that's been there. So we've dropped onto what was previously a relatively unused area of the city at the north of Victoria Docks. Quite so far 13 restaurants, and this summer we've had fantastic weather. People have been out in their droves around the docks and in the city, and we've traded very well. It's been great. It's used the lovely sort of outside space that we've got, and the decks and the views over the water, which as I always say, most cities would give their right arms to have an area of inland water like Gloucester does. It's bedding in well, I think is a phrase.
I mean, one of the things that grabs me is how many people eat holy gelato when it's pouring down with rain or it's really cold. It's such a popular product.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a delicious product, as you know, Mark. Absolutely extraordinary. What a lovely story. I mean, 3 years ago, my co-founder and I, Ken, went out to meet the family in Elmore on their farm, and sat around their kitchen table and talked about the prospect of them opening up a space at the food dock. And here they are now. They've got queues out of the door, down the steps. It's a great product. And they're trading their socks off. It's a lovely story.
So they're one of the most popular ones. Is there, how are the others trading itself? Hetty's it always seems to be pretty busy.
Yeah,
Hot
no,
Kettle.
absolutely. And I think, they've, it always takes a while for a restaurant to settle down a little bit, both in terms of the operations and the customer base. And that's exactly what's happened this summer. So they've all sort of beginning to get real traction on their cuisine. I'm looking at the ones you've got there. Daikoku ramen it's fantastic ramen product, and they have a very, very large customer base that follow them and doing exceptionally well. There, Bellamere, they are they've been there, one of the most established restaurants there. They, as you know, they have the pizzas at the front and they have the cocktails. The secret cocktail bar at the back, and they're doing extraordinarily well. They're always creative. They're always up for new ways of doing things, and they've got a lovely sort of external area now. Which they've done very well with the heating and the external tables and some canopies. So it's doing very well.
I mean, what sort of footfall are we talking about now, Sarah? If you could talk about those sorts of things.
We don't measure in terms of footfall. We've had this is not our first development, and footfall's always a bit misleading because it's what you're really interested is in the number of covers that come through and the turnover of the place. And in terms of that, it's growing year on year. We're not going to lie into if you're going back to footfall, we would like to see more footfall through the docks. And I think this is one of the things that Gloucester really has to tackle in that, you talked earlier about Gloucester. The evening economy in Gloucester is much flatter than many locations. And, I don't think people turn to their city centre always from the outskirts of Gloucester to come into the city centre in the evening. And we could all do with improving that, because a healthy city is one that has a good evening economy as well as a daytime economy. And Gloucester is still a city that tends to turn off a little bit at 5 o'clock, 5:30. So we'd like to see footfall improve a bit. And it's also spreading that footfall across the city. We've got the wonderful stuff that's happening at the Forum now, the University of Gloucester, this city centre campus. The next step is to make sure that all connects well and that people start using their city centre more than they have done.
Do you get the rugby crowd, Sarah?
Sorry?
Do you get the rugby crowd on a match day?
Yes, no, we do. And we do a lot of work with the women's rugby, Gloucester Hartpury rugby. So we get the two fronts, really. We have the Gloucester supporters come in, especially with Hop Kettle, the tap room that we've got there, very popular, and the supporters come in. There's also a little bit from the football, obviously, because the football's sort of the other side of us and walks back to the station, although that's very much smaller numbers. And then we work quite a lot with the girls at Gloucester Hartpury. As we know, they're sort of really doing a lot for Gloucester's profile at the moment, playing in the World Cup over the place. And it's the link with the college as well, which is interesting there, and the relationship with the college and the player pathway and the students and the coaching that comes through, as well as obviously the profile of the men's team and the support that comes around that. So yeah, no, it's a big part. That's a big part of the city.
First game of the season tonight.
Well done.
One of the things I would say, Sarah, is the parking at night. The car parks are too dark. That's the biggest problem. I hear that complaint all the time. They really should sort that out.
I think generally parking is a complicated thing, and we looked with trepidation at the comment this week that to fill the hole in Gloucester's budget at the moment, they're looking at increasing the parking charges. That would be a bad step for a city at the moment that's trying to build its commercial heart. And we've all got to pull together and find ways of building this commercial heart. And parking isn't easy. The Quays is the easiest parking place in the city, but that's right at one end of the city, and everyone moves from there across and through the city centre. So couldn't agree more. We need to focus on making the parking available, safe, comfortable, to support us all. Yeah.
And cheaper. Not more expensive. It's bonkers. Anyway, thank you ever so much for that, Sarah. But Morton, I'm going to come back to you, but I'm going to have to try and keep it a little bit short. On your side of the business, on the Moreton Cullimore side of the business, how is it trading at the moment?
Yeah, it's ebbs and flows. June and July we were really busy. Saw a massive upturn, which needed to happen, to be honest, because Easter, when things normally turn on for us, wasn't as buoyant as we usually expect it to be. But then August, it dropped back off again, and we probably dropped probably 400,000 or 500,000 pounds worth of turnover if we were to project June and July. So September's feeling a little bit busier again. So it's difficult to predict, which makes planning for business tricky, because going back to the truck drivers thing, is that, do we need more? Do we need less? People that leave, do we replace them? Et cetera, et cetera. It's really tricky. So it's sporadic. Normally, historically, we'd have busy from Easter through to later autumn when the weather really starts to turn. But now it's kind of like a month by month thing of looking at what's in front of us. I mean, there's plenty of inquiries. It's not like I'm saying the economy's awful. There's plenty of inquiries, but the work is sporadic, which makes business planning difficult, as I'm sure everyone here would probably attest to as well.
And it's quite a competitive market that you're in as well, isn't it?
For sure, we live in a world of multinationals. One of the things I tried not to pick up on the news is, we keep seeing talk about the A417, the new road development up there, and we saw the Cheltenham MP talking about his visit there the other week and how great it was. But none of our local businesses around the area have actually had any or very little input into it. So it's not helping the local economy other than it will give us a more congestion-free route. I find it really difficult when we do these local infrastructure projects, but then local businesses aren't involved, and it's not just mine. It's all of the other people that you have on this podcast as well.
And I've heard the actual 32 mile wall, Cotswold stone wall, wasn't built by anybody local. It was actually Irish people bought in. That's the allegation I've heard.
It's rife. The whole project is rife with stories like that I could tell you, and that I know. And you only need to see the lorries that have been parked up at the top of the hill there for many months. We won't talk about whether they've got an operator license to be there or not. They're not from around here. They're from very, very far afield, which is why they've got to park there. It's pretty shabby, in my view.
No, without a shadow of a doubt. And when we had the 6 MPs, I remember them all being there. The Tory guys all saying it's going to be local jobs, 300 million for local people, and it's not that. I've heard this all the time, mate.
Yeah, and all the companies in the back of that photo, none of them were from Gloucestershire.
Yeah, that's right. I did pick that up. I said it to them at the time, but unfortunately, you can bang that drum so hard, but nobody's listening. That's the problem. Nobody gives a bloody shit. Excuse my language, because that is the broad fact. Once that contract's gone, Anyway.
Yep.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Morton. Thanks for being so honest as well. Hey guys, look, we are kind of running out of time, but I do want to bring in this council thing. Look, £300,000 investment on road safety initiatives. I'm going to bring you in, Mike, because let's be honest, you're in the cycle business, and Morton, you're in the lorry business. Is this going to be money well spent? What's your view on it?
Well, we were chatting before, Morton and I, and we both had exactly the same view that, if you want to make a road safer, get rid of the massive pothole, because if a cyclist has to skirt out to go around a pothole and there's one of his lorries right behind him, that's not making anybody happy or doing anybody any favors. So 20-mile-an-hour signs, £300,000 on safety initiatives. Spend them, don't waste that money. Spend it on fixing the bloody roads.
Okay. Obviously, Andrew's worried about his Bentley that he's still driving around with 2 years. What do you reckon, Andy?
I think that there's a better way of spending that money in terms of rather than the roads are pretty safe already. In most places, I think that fill the potholes and you just use that money in a better way.
Sarah?
I've not much to add really, but yes, potholes. I think in terms of walking and making city centres, particularly city centres, walkable. If there's things that can be done, then I think that that's all good. But I agree. There's more we could do at the moment to invest in the economy and drive it.
I would say, go after these e-bike people and driving around for the centre of towns and scooters, e-scooters, who have no licenses, dressed in black, no lights, running through the city before they bloody kill somebody. That would be my big thing if you want to really know where the money should go. Morton?
Yeah.
£300,000?
Look, anything that cuts congestion, there's CO2 and emissions benefit there. B, it makes us all happy when that's sat in traffic, but it boosts the economy because it gets things delivered quicker and on time and pushes things forward. So yeah, potholes that we don't want to make life any more stressful. But I mean, there's a big road project that's near Waitrose in Cirencester. They've spent the last 6 months changing a roundabout. Has it improved anything? No. God knows how much they've spent there to put lanes in. That roundabout has always worked. There's never really been congestion there, other than when they were doing the roadworks. We seem to spend money for money's sake sometimes. It's about wise choices, isn't it?
Okay, that's a good place to finish on that particular sector. Okay, it's picking the punchlines, guys. We are massively over time, but it's been a great discussion. So I'm going to go with you, Mike. Picking the punchlines, please. What's your story this week? Let's keep it really, really tight, if you don't mind.
I was impressed you got the scoop over the FT on the John Lewis story. They nicked it from you, and it's in today's Financial Times. But yes, John Lewis, sales up, everything up, but they're still losing cash. And I just think, isn't that interesting? 6.2 billion pounds worth of sales, everything's up, and yet they're still losing money.
Yeah, I don't understand that, how you could still lose so much money when you have such a massive turnover. But hey, what do I know? Sarah, pick up the punchlines. Thanks for that, Mike.
Pick one is quickly, how sad it is to see a restaurant like Ox go in Cheltenham. Just reading from UK Hospitality now. Hospitality contributes £93 billion to the economy, but it's still a very tough industry to get right. Lovely to be part of, but quite tough.
Obviously, Ox closes, but we get a new Greggs. Hey, Moreton, what have you picked out, please?
So it's the one that the 200 and something thousand pounds being spent on sewing clubs and sports clubs. You know me, I'm a big advocate of local rugby clubs. I think, the way we get our youth and our communities feeling better about themselves and supporting each other is definitely through localized sports, or anything that helps put roofs on rugby and cricket club pavilions and all that sort of. I'm a big advocate for that. So yeah, I'm good. It's good to see some money going in the right direction there.
Okay, thanks for that. Andy, what have we picked out for this week's punchline?
Yeah, my headline is around the free parking in the Forest of Dean council-owned car parks, which I think is a great idea. Keep people in the towns and villages rather than having to go out of town to park for free elsewhere. So I think it's a great idea to keep people in their local area.
And for once, some common sense. It's a no-brainer. Hey guys, I just want to say a big thank you to my wonderful panel. Thanks ever so much for this week. To all of you for watching the show. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. We'll be back again next week. But remember, in between that and my wonderful sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors, between now and next week, it's all in the punchline. Thanks for watching. Bye. If I can find my mouse. Bye.